ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमि स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। प्रज्ञां सुप्रदानैः स्थिरचरनिकरैः व्यापिभिर्व्याप्य लोकान् भुक्त्वा भोगान् सविष्टान् पुनरदिदिषणोद्भासितान् कामजन्यान् पीत्वा सर्वान् विशेषान् स्वपिति मधुरभुङ् मायया भोजयन्नो मायासङ्ख्यं तुरीयं परममृतमजं ब्रह्म यत्तन्नतोऽस्मि। यो विश्वात्मा विदिजविषयान् प्रास्यभोगान् स्तविष्टान् पश्चाश्चान्यान् स्वमिति विभवान् ज्योतिषान् स्वेन सूक्ष्मान् सर्वानेतान् पुनरभिशनैः स्वात्मनि स्थापयित्वा हित्वा सर्वान् विशेषान् विगतगुणगणैः पातुसौ न तुरीयः। The Mandukya Upanishad mantras are Om ityetadaksharamidam sarvam tasyopavvakhyanam bhutam bhavishyatiti sarvam onkara eva yachanyat trikaladidam tadapyo onkara eva sarvam hetad brahma ayamatma brahma soyamatma chatushpad जागरितस्थानो बहिप्रज्ञः सप्तांग एकोनविंशतिमुखः स्थूलभुक् वैश्वानर प्रथमपादः स्वप्नस्थानो अंतःप्रज्ञ सप्तांग एकोनविंशतिमुखः विविक्तभुक् तैजसो द्वितीयपादः यत्र सुप्नो न कञ्चन कामं कामयते न कञ्चन स्वप्नं पश्यति तत् सुषुप्तं सुषुप्तस्थान एकीभूतः प्रज्ञानघन एवमानन्दमयो आनन्दभुक् तेजोमुखः प्राज्ञ तृतीयपादः एष सर्वेश्वर सर्वज्ञ सर्वान्तर्यामी यो एष योनिः सर्वस्य प्रभवप्ययो हि भूतानां न अन्तःप्रज्ञं न बहिःप्रज्ञं नोभयदप्रज्ञं न प्रज्ञानघनं न प्रज्ञं नाप्रज्ञम् अदृश्यम् अव्यवहार्यम् अग्राह्यम् अलक्षणम् अचिन्त्यम् अव्यपदेशम् एकात्मप्रत्ययसारं प्रपञ्चोपशमं शान्तं शिवम् अद्वैतं चतुर्थं मन्यन्ते स आत्मा स विज्ञेयः। सोयमात्मा अध्यक्षरमोङ्कारम् अधिमात्रं पादा मात्रा मात्राश्च पादा अकार उकार मकार इति जागरितस्थानो वैश्वानर अकार प्रथमा मात्रा आप्तेरादिमत्वाद् आप्नोति ह वै सर्वान् कामान् आदिश्च भवति य एवं वेद। स्वप्नस्थानत् तैजस उकारो द्वितीया मात्रा उत्कर्षात् उभयत्वाद् वा उत्कर्षति ह वै ज्ञानसन्ततिं समानश्च भवति न अस्य ब्रह्मवित् कुले भवति य एवं वेद। सुषुप्तस्थान प्राज्ञः मकार तृतीया मात्रा मितेरपीतेर्वा मिनोति ह वा इदं सर्वम् अपीतिश्च भवति य एवं वेदः। अमात्रश्चतुर्थाव्यवहार्य प्रपञ्चोपशमः शिव अद्वैत एवमोङ्कार आत्मैव संविशति आत्मना आत्मानं य एवं वेद। ओम तत्सत्। So we have been doing the last 25 sessions starting with the Upanishadic mantras and the Gaudapada Karika, which the first chapter was basically an explanation of the Upanishadic mantras for a better understanding, and the second chapter we had the Vaidatya Prakaranam, or the illusion, where the illusory nature of the experiences were explained. And the third chapter was Advaita Prakaranam, where the unity between the absolute and the transcendental is an appearance. As a unity is a reality, and that transcendental separation from the absolute is a appearance. And that there is no creation, there is no duality, and there is only one untouched or non-contact knowledge, which is the consciousness, awareness, Brahma, Atma, Turiya. Different words are used for that. That is only the reality. In the process, we knew that we have to always keep it in mind that there are fourfold message which Gaudapada has been always conveying through his messages. His first message is that the origination of the world should be negated. The world has not been really originated from anything, nor there is a creation for the world of experiences, the objects, the subject, or the interaction between the between the two. Therefore, the existence of the world should be negated. The existence of the world which is experienced is being negated. The appearance and the experience of the world is to be accepted. The appearance is there. We are having pratyaksha, or we are having our sensory input of the appearances, and the experiences caused by the appearance is to be accepted, because that is a experience which is helping us to cross over the appearance, which is not a reality, to the real. And this can be done only when the cause of the appearance and the experience is to be understood as the ignorance of the substratum, or the Turiyam or Brahma, which itself is being misunderstood due to Maya as a separate creation and entity. So once we have this fourfold clarity on our understanding, the fourth chapter Gaudapada has written with the clear in understanding that he has understood that the knowledge which he had conveyed in the first, second, and third chapter was meant only for the Uttamadhikari, or the apt student whose mental blocks are not there. He has no hang-ups on his experiences. He has no hang-up on the appearance being only partial and temporary in nature. They do not have a permanency or nityatvam in it. So only such a student would have accepted the first three chapters and the understanding that. They would have been questions or doubts which are arising, which is a normal habit of the mind to throw up challenges whenever something which is not fathomable for the mind and acceptable to the mind, to create confusion or to deviate our attention. So with this in mind, Gaudapada has embarked on writing the fourth chapter, even though the name Alathasanthi Prakaranam is indicating of a torch which is burning, a wooden torch at the end of that, which has a fire. When it is rotated, Alatham means a wooden torch, and when it is rotated, instead of seeing a spot of burning stake, we feel that there is an existence of a circle. And this appearance of the circle, quenching of that, to see what is the source from where the circle, appearance of the circle has originated, is what is called the Alathasanthi Prakaranam, is a treatise. Basically, this treatise is not new or creation by Gaudapada. This was there, even the Buddhistic literature, now especially Nagarjuna's Karika, it is there. So there were because of that, there are attributions saying that Gaudapada is a Buddhist scholar who have converted to Advaita, or he is a Buddhist in the guise of an Advaitin, different, method of, abusing or, naming the master has taken place. But we are not going into the, literature part or the history part of it. Our interest is to know the truth or to understand what is being taught, apply it on our own experiences. The important aspect of any study, forget about Upanishad. Any study which you make or any knowledge which is taken, understood, unless it is applicable and put into practice, that knowledge is as useless as a library book. So don't think that, these teachings are meant to be a intellectual jugglery or a treatise for the intellect to argue and counter argue. No. The purpose of my interest in giving this, sharing my knowledge to all of you is for that. Well, I request all of you to apply it in your own practice and application and see validity of these teaching applicable. There may be places where it may not be gelling with your own experiments because of certain impediments which will come. No doubt about it, but that will get clarified as and when you practice it again and again. This exactly is what is the theme of the 4th chapter of Advaita Prakaranam or Alathasanthi Prakaranam, where Gaudapada is starting with a prayer to that unique person who has given him this knowledge. And then in the second verse, he is giving a prostration or salutation to this Ajada knowledge or the Advaita knowledge itself. So this is how the 4th chapter is starting, and it is also ending with a similar salutation. So this has deviated from the trend which he had done for the 1st, 2nd and 3rd chapter. So there is also historians and grammar, other literature whiz kids who say that this is not by, Gaudapada, it has been written by somebody else, added up as the 4th chapter, because more references to the Buddhistic approach is there, etc., etc. So let us not get into those arguments and all. What we are interested is that what he is teaching. So I always tell that there is a famous Subhashitam or a good poem or a good verse which I always use for my explanation, that Ananda Veda Bahuveditavyam Alpascha Kala Bahavascha Vigna Yat Sarabhudam Tatupasitavyam Yadahamso Shrirambu Mishra. Ananda Veda, innumerable. Ananta means innumerable. Veda means knowledge. That means here it is indicating the sources of knowledge. There are innumerable sources of knowledge. Ananda Veda. Alpascha Kala Bahavascha Vigna. We have very limited time, because looking at the enormous amount of knowledge available in the world, with the different libraries, masters and different philosophies, different teachers and all, they are innumerable in nature. But we have a very limited time. We started interest into this only when we knew that such things existed. So a lot of time our life has been lost in the childhood or the adulthood or the teenage, etc., etc. Bahavascha Vigna. There are many impediments, because we need to make sure that food, clothing and shelter is to be done. For that we need to be working in the world and earning our livelihood. So the time allotment for learning these knowledge or grasping this knowledge is also big. These are the impediments for us to not devote our full attention to that. Alpascha Kala Bahavascha Vigna. So what is that then? What do we do? Yat Sarabhudam Tadupasitavyam. What is the crux of this teaching when it is being conveyed through, instead of studying the entire Veda, if the Upanishad is giving the crux of the Veda, so yatsarabhudam tadupasitavyam. That is the one which is to be understood and studied by close study. Now, this can be done either through books or through teacher or it is not only Upanishad, anything which you want to learn, you need to get the right interpretation, because most of these things are not in our today's nomenclature and transactional knowledge. So we need to make effort for understanding this from the people who know about it. There are people who, without taking any effort, decry these are ancient and these knowledge have no meaning in today's sense. Only science has a validity, etc. Science has validity in its own nature. It is not being denied by these scriptures, nor is the scriptures in contradiction with the science or the modern learning which we have. As the world progresses, these knowledge can be adapted for applying anywhere, because this knowledge which we learn from the Upanishad are, immortal in nature, and anytime can come into application, because they are talking about the truth, and truth never goes through any alteration, moderation, or change. Anything created can go through changes or moderation or alteration, but the truth with which it is made, that substratum, doesn't undergo any change. So yat sarabhudam tad upasitavyam yada hamso shirambu mishram. Like the mythical bird Hamsa, which segregates the milk solid from the milk. Now, it is said that the saliva of that bird curdles the milk instantaneously, and its tongue is like a paper filter which can, retain the solid and throw out the water from the milk solid after taking the milk solid. So, like that, we should take the best of these teachings. What is meant? What is the, the crux or the useful thing from these teachings? There may be poetic explanation. There may be, exaggeration. There may be examples which are used. Everything has its own place. But what is needed is one should go and give attention to what is the essence of the teaching. That is what matters. And if it is applicable to our life, and is it helping us, is what can be done only by the individual who is listening. Anyone else talking about it, even my explanation or the Upanishad Rishi's explanation or anybody else explaining that, will have no effect on anyone who is listening unless the person applies this to his own understanding and life. So with that in the mind, and prayer to the Purushottama, the one who is passed on this knowledge to us, we will start the first Karika of the fourth chapter. Jnanena akasha kalpena dharma anya gaganopaman neya bhinnena sambuddha tam vande divitambaram. Yaha, the one who is akasha kalpanena, similar to the space. Neya bhinnena, it is not different from the neyam, means the objects of the knowledge. Jnanena, by knowledge, we should know that it is not different from the knower and the knowledge. There is no difference. And how does that neya binna jnanena, that the one, this is only if we apply it to, we are applying this to our knowledge, is used for knowing ourselves and the experiences we are having. So neya binnena, jnanena jnaya binnena, and gaganopaman dharman. Here the dharman is not the dharma, but here the dharma, the meaning is for the jiva or the individual. Gaganopaman, it is like the sky again. So what has done Sambuddha is the one who knows that Samyak Buddhi, means here the all-knowing Ishvara is the indication why the word Sambuddha is that Sarvatnya. So that Sarvatnya has taught that the Jiva Dharma is like the Gaganopaman, like the sky. In the sky, how we find that objects are coming, occupying, is not separate from the sky because it needs the sky for its own existence. So there is ananyatvam in that, sneya bhinnatvam. The objects known, the jiva himself and the objects in this thing is depending upon the Gagana Upaman, like the space, that truth which is like the space. So remember the example of where the pot space and the example which was there in the previous chapter. So by the creation, Akasha Kalpanena, once we have this imagination of the space and then the Jiva and the Jnaya Bhinna is by known only through Jnana, who has been passed on to us by the Sambuddha or the Ishvara. And who is he? Dvipadam Varam. Dvipataha means Dvu means bipeds. Varam means best among the two pets, means indicating the Guru or Ishvara here, because it's a parampara. Arayanam Patmabhuvam Vasishtam Vyasancha Tatputra Parasharamcha Yogindra. It is like that, it goes like that. So Dvipadam Varam is indicating of the teacher tradition and the best among the teachers. Tam Vande, to whom is my prostrations. I salute to such a person. So I bow down to Purushottama or Parameshwara or that Ishvara, who is the embodiment of knowledge, like the space, who by giving the knowledge made me realize that I am not separate from him, like that. If I am not even separate in the sense like the subject and object separation is an imagination or an appearance which could be negated by knowledge. Therefore, he has shown me that knowledge with which the Jiva Brahma Aikyam, or there is no difference between the Jiva and the Turiya, the substratum on which the Jiva is being experienced. So the experience of individuality is not separate from that awareness in which everything becomes awareness, or everything is shining in the form of awareness as objects. Neya Bhinna. So that is the meaning of the first Karika. In the second Karika, he is now praising the knowledge itself. Asparsha yogo vainama sarvasat sukha hita avivada aviruddhascha deshidastam namamyaham aham namami. I am saluting. To whom? Sarvasat sukha, the existence of all happiness. The happiness and existence are not two separate things, but that Sarvasat Sukha means normally we have the tendency to know happiness related to objects when it becomes part of us. Priya Moda Pramoda becomes when we desire it, it is Priya. When we get it, we have a Moda, and when we consume it or when we enjoy it, it is a Pramoda. So these are the three knowledge of Sukha we know. But here he is talking about Sarvasat Sukha. It is the nature of happiness in the existence of everything. That itself is Hidaha. And that is not something which is hampering or disturbing, in any way going to be opposing in nature. It is a well-being. Hidaha means well-being of Sarva, everything again. Avivadaha, it is non-controversial. Aviruddhascha, it is not opposing the reality also. Because if it is Vivada, it is a controversial free, But then again, vivada can happen, or the viruddha means the knowledge can be negated later. Aviruddha means that knowledge or that happiness has never been negated at any point of time. Shankara is giving a very detailed, explanation on it. What he says that is that what he says, उपदेष्टृ नाम संस्कारं सुखेन ज्ञाने ज्ञानज्ञेय बेर अभिहितं परमार्थ तत्वदर्शनम् इह प्रकारेण प्रतिपादितयिषितं प्रति प्रति प्रतिपक्ष प्रतिषेध द्वारेण प्रतिज्ञातं भवति. It's a highly technical statement, but the summary is like that. Jnana Jnaya Jnatru Veda Rahitam. There is the triputi or the threesome of subject, object, and the knowing. That is the aviruddham. There is no viroda in that. In that, what happens is that Paramartha Tattva Darshanam Iha. That is the Paramartha Tattva Darshanam. That Atma Satyanu Bodham, which we heard in the 3rd chapter, that itself is the Paramartha Tattva Darshanam, or Asparsha Yoga, or Asanga Yoga, or the Turiya Jnanam. That Pradipapa Tripada Ishitam, to know, by explaining that to us through the yoga of Asparsha, Pratipaksha Pratisheda Dwarena. All Pratipaksham means opposition to that. This knowledge, when it is being explained to us, whatever opposing nature which is being projected by the different philosophers, everything when it is being answered, pradijñādam bhavati, it becomes crystal clear. So we should understand that the purpose of Asparsha Yoga is to that it is only the knowledge. The Asparsha Yoga here means not the yoga of any other practice. The Asparsha Yoga itself is the Asanga Jnanam. The non-contact, the reality of there is non-duality, therefore there is no two to contact, and therefore it is Asparsha or non-contact. So that Deshitaha tam, Deshita Upadeshitam, the one who has, advised me or explained to me, tam namamyaham, to him I am prostrating. He is continuing the prostration to the Jnana Swarupa. In the first chancer, he said Dopitamida, it's in the physical form of a guru. He said that. Here the guru has become the Asparsha Yoga or the Jnana Swarupa. And with that Jnana Swarupa, all sorts of vivada has been, the controversies have been removed, and all pratipaksha, oppositions have been also removed, and by advising the reality to me, to him is my prostrations. Now onwards, the real teaching starts from this particular chapter. There are two schools of philosophy which were very prominent even today and being used by all philosophers of Indian systems of philosophy. One is the Sankhya system and the other one is Vaisheshika Nyaya or Tarka is the means in which it. Because the Sankhya system was the oldest. Even before Buddhism and everything, it was there as the oldest philosophy. That has been the substratum for all subsequent philosophy, or sprouts come out from that one banyan tree of Sankhya. To know that, we should know where the Sankhya has reached up to which level. Why did the subsequent philosophies deviate and come out is because of the tendencies of the teachers who explained to them. They gave predominance to certain aspects. So we should understand that Sankhya and Vaisheshika, Nyaya Vaisheshika are two schools which are opposing each other. Because when the Sankhya system was taught, Vaisheshika Nyaya system, even though they adopted lot of things from the Nyaya Vaisheshika thing, they opposed certain aspects of Nyaya Sankhya system also. So keeping this in mind, we will have to understand the next five Karikas for when I'll explain where is the difference coming also. So Bhutasya Jatim Icchanti Vadinaha Kechidev hi Aputasyapare Dhiraha Vivadanta Parasparam. Vadinaha means those who argue or postulate philosophies. Vivadanta Parasparam. They argue between themselves. What are the arguments? Bhutasya Jatim Icchanti. The Sankhya system says that Prakriti is from where all creation is taking place in the presence of the Purusha. So Prakriti is Jatam, even it is there even before. From Prakriti comes the creation is the Sankhya system of explanation. Bhutasya Jatim Icchanti Vadinaha Kechideva. And whereas Nayayika and Vaisheshika, what they say is that Abhudasya Jadim Icchanti. Abhudasya Apare. Apare means other. Dhiraha means Dhimantaha or Vadinaha. So the Nyaya Vaisheshika says Abhudasya Apare. The reason is that when Sankhya system said that Prakriti has become by creation into multitudes of jivas, and the jiva is a creation from the Prakriti. Bhutasya Jadi. So Nayayika and Vaisheshika say, but they opposite, saying that if it is already born, why there should be further creation for it? How can you say they are creation from the first one? The first one itself is the second one. How can you say that the second one is a creation separate from the first one? No, there is no separatedness from this thing. But we are proposing that before creation there should be absence of that. Only when there is an absence of anything, something can be created. Now if a pot is to be created, the absence of the pot should be there first. In that place only a pot can be created. Now if the pot is already there, why should somebody create a pot? Now Prakriti, if it is there, Jiva is also part, is like Prakriti only, the creation from the Jata, from the Bhutasya Jatam. So what is the necessity to call it as a Jatam? It is only the Prakriti only is there, you should say. You cannot say the creation is there. That is why these two Parasparam Vaditavantaha. So then the Sankhya system say, if you are saying it is the absence of the pot and you are creating the pot is not being created from something which is not there at all. You are using the mud or the clay from which you are making the pot. The pot in the name and form of the pot is never seen in the clay, but it is there as a seed in the pot. It is the seed form of the pot which comes into shape when the pratibandha or the obstacle for the shape and the form to come up, that when it is removed, it is coming. So they saying that our philosophy is right, it is already there, it is only an appearance of the name and form from the mud, which is this you are saying thing. But Nayayika say that if it is there in the pot, but the pot is not there when it is being created. If pot is there, there is no need for creation. So we are creating a pot from a raw material, that is fine, but the pot is not there. This way both of them argue. Advaitin says we have no argument with either of them because they are arguing between themselves and they do not know the reality because of the reason why they are arguing between themselves. Then goes to the next Karika. Bhutam na jayate kanchit kinchit bhutam naiva jayate vivedanto advaya hi evam ajatim khyatayanti te. Bhutam na kinchit jayate. Once it is there, there is nothing which can create out of that, or it's something which you being created means it is not separate from the first. Bhutam na kanchit jayate. Abhudam naiva jayate. Now this is roughly saying that nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sada. That meaning is being given here. That is, what is already existing cannot be born, and what is not there can never take birth also. This is the way they are fighting with these dualists, Dvaitins, those who create the multiplicity in the world of experiences. They are arguing between themselves on this creation aspect. Evam jadim khapayanti. Then they in actually, by doing that, both of them, what are they doing? There is absolutely, they are revealing that both being opposing to each other, both of them are wrong. There is really no creation taking place, which is the Ajadivada, what the Advaitin is saying. So we don't have to fight with them. They are fighting between each other and negating one another's philosophy. But if one is to really analyze that their arguments, you will find that the creation is never a reality. It is never taking place. Those dualists the real birthlessness of the in the world, because there is no creation as per the Bhudasya Jadam na bhavati, na Abhudasya Jadam na kadapi bhavati. So there in both the cases, created cannot further create, the non-existent current, like the hair of a horn cannot be created. That is abhudam, which is never possible to be created, can never be created. Or a child for a barren woman, or a flower from the sky. These are all the abhudasya jadam. Bhudasya na kinchit jayate is that what is being there is exactly what is being seen in the other one also. What you see as mud is nothing but mud in the shape of a pot. So pot is not a creation, it is the mud, only the name and form is appearing different, but in the substance with which it is appearing, that bhutam, the mud is a created one. From there, the pot is, when it is born, it is not a separate creation. What is it showing? It is showing that ajadi, ajadam is the reality. So then the next Karika says, Khyapyamanam ajadim tai anumodamahe vayam vivadamaha na tai sardam avivadam no nibhodataha. So what is that anumodamahe? We are congratulating both of them because they made our life easier. Vayam modamahe, anumodamahe. Vayam means Advaitins here. Advaitins are saying we are congratulating them, or we are thanking them for, because ajadim tai khyapyanamanam. What they are proposing unknowingly is ajadi, because they are not seeing the ajadi in their argument. They are arguing between negating each other, but if they can closely see it and analyze it, they will find that they are approving birthlessness by negating both of them each other. So we approve that birthlessness revealed by them. Both of them are showing that jadasya janmana bhavati, ajadasya katana janma bhavidam arhati. So the created doesn't have to go through a birth again, nor the impossible one, which is ajadam, which is not this thing, which cannot be born, can be created. So therefore, the unborn will remain as unborn only. If you think it is born, it cannot be born again. So therefore, if you think it is born, it will remain as what it is. So there is absolutely no creation which is taking place, which is our Advaiti stand, is that the creation is really not taken place. The creation has never happened. Ajadasyaiva dharmasya jadi michandi vadinaha Ajato hi amruto dharma martyatam kadameshyate. Vadinaha, those who are disputing disputing it. Ajadasya evasya dharmasya jadim ichandi. By the disputes, what are they postulating or what are they proposing? The birth of the unknown, unborn reality. Ajadasya, reality is what is there for they are proposing by doing this argument. By the argument between themselves. Ajato, the unborn, he amritaha is the immortal, dharma is a reality. Martyadam kadam ishade, how can the subject be mortality? If the ajadi or the reality is unborn or cannot take birth or cannot go for a creative process, so how can there the mortality? Because the moment you say creation, the the mortality and the rebirth is keeping on happening. That is the previous form and the previous state is going through an annihilation and a new product is being created. So the creation has to precede an annihilation. Annihilation and creation is intermittent. But how can the unborn be ever subjugated to creation? Because it was never born, can it be never be born again? So there is no rebirth or no birth again for this the reality which is what we are talking about, the ajatam or advaitam. Na bhavati amritam martyah na martya amritam tada. Prakriter anyato bhavo na kachantit bhavishyati. This verse we have seen, the second part we have seen it in the third chapter again. Prakriter anyato bhavo na kachantit bhavishyati. The nature of the anything which is in the nature can never be altered. And when it cannot be altered, creation is denied. Na bhavati amritam martyaha. Amritam, that which is immortal, can never become martyam, means which is subject to birth and death. Na martyasya amritam tada. Nor can be the one which is becoming mortal can become immortal. Once you think that you are immortal or mortal, then you cannot become immortal. So that all both are contradicting each other. So the transformation of this intrinsic nature, of this thing, the fire can never be killed to say that the fire has been killed. The fire may not appear to be seen there, or the fuel would have been over, the conditions under which the fire existed. But the nature of the fire to give light and heat can never be separated out of the fire. That is what is called the Prakriti. It is not the appearance of the fire we are talking about. It is the heat and the light of the fire is the very nature with which we call it as a fire. Same way, every object in the world has got a Prakriti or an intrinsic nature in them. That will never undergo any change, because if that goes through a change, then that object will never be the same object again. So you cannot say that it is the same object, because if the intrinsic nature of an object is going through any change, that means that was not its intrinsic nature. If it is intrinsic in nature, it will never change. But appearances can happen and appearances can change. That is a different aspect altogether. But prakriter anyato bhavo na katanjit bhavishyati. This intrinsic nature of everything in the world is immutable, unchangeable. Therefore, the immortal can never become mortal, because the nature of immortal is to remain immortal. So it cannot become mortal. Or if you are thinking that there is a thinking called mortal, it can never become immortal, because then it is not mortal if it can become immortal. So in either case, these two are not possible, and because the intrinsic nature of objects can never go through any alteration. Swabhavo na amrito yasya dharmo gacchati martyatam. Kritakena amritasya kadam styasyati nischala. Now, Swabhava is the intrinsic nature again. Na Swabhavena, by the nature of Amritaha, they mean that the immortal reality, Yasya Swabhavena Amritaha Dharma Martyata, is the intrinsically immortal reality is subject to mortality for a person. Tasya, for him, Kritakena, by activity or by kartrudharma or by doing activity onto this, amritaha sa katam tyasyati nisala. How can that immortality remain in the same that it cannot be thing? So if immortality is the nature of a person, activity by doing kritagam or karma, you cannot achieve amrutatvam again, because it is that nature which is already there. But if he is thinking that he is mortal and he want to do karma or the activity, and with that he will become immortal, that is also not possible, because then the Swarupa will change. Prakriti will change. The mortal will be the mortal. Nature of the mortal itself is called, means it is mortal in nature. Mortal can never become immortal, and the immortal can never become mortal. So amritaha kadam asyati nishtalaha. How can that the same thing, either you call it amrita or either you call it as mrita, means immortal or mortal, they cannot be changed to one another, and that is what is that prakriteer anyato bhavo. No action can change that. That is what the main important part of this eighth Karika. That by action, if you think you can change it, by acting on the lump of mud, you have created a clay and a pot. You have not changed the nature of mud. The mud itself is in appearing the form of a pot. If you remove the mud from that, which is the intrinsic nature of the lump of clay, the pot has no existence. So it is very clear that the activity cannot bring immortality or mortality for either of them. So what the Vedas were telling, that the kriyas and the yajna dana karma or yoga and all those things which activity to achieve immortality. For if you think that you are a human being who have birth, growth, age, decay and death, no action can give you immortality. But if you can understand the reality of it, what is the reality of the nature of it, what is going through the birth, growth, decay and death, and that you can understand that is a transformation of what is from which it came. It is going back to that. It has come from the mud in the form of nutrition or food or protein, etc. And when it is dying, it is going back to the mud only from where it has come. But the one which you think, if the jiva thinks that, if the individual thinks that I am getting birth, I am going childhood, old age and everything, is the body's attribution is superimposed on the Atma, which is always immortal and observing the changes, the one who knows the changes without going through any changes. No activity by doing onto the mortal of the body will not become immortal. And the Atma, which is immortal, already is observing the mortality of the body, or the changes or parinama or the mutation of the body, which is that is the nature of that mutation of the body. So that is not leaving its nature, nor Atma need to leave its nature. Atma is always immortal. So activity cannot bring the body immortality, but the Atma, which is immortal, doesn't need the activity to become immortal also. In either case, Kritakena amritasya katam tasyati nischala. The kritakam or the all the activity is not needed for any of this because these are all happening only in the delusion. Samsiddhiki swabhaviki sahaja agrita cha ya prakriti seti vitneya swabhavam na jahati sa. Swabhavam na jahati. Nature is never, the intrinsic nature is never given up. The Prakriti doesn't give up its nature. Samsiddhiki, it means siddhi, using siddhis and doing lot of practices. If you think that you have achieved something, what is achieved is something which is temporary in nature, that will not remain with you, that will be going. But it is swabhaviki, it is by nature, intrinsic in nature, inherent is in the nature of the object. That is sahaja, it is from the time of birth itself is there, therefore it is akrita, it is not created by something new up. And akrita, swabhavam na jahati, that the nature with which it is sahaja, what is born with that, na jahati, is not being given up. Sa prakriti iti vitneya. That is what you should understand, that is the prakriti. This prakriti is what it is mentioned in the previous verse, is prakriter anyado bhavo na katanjit bhavishyati. We used a word called prakriti. That prakriti is to be known, that which is not given up by itself. It is the intrinsic nature, that is what is called prakriti. And it is samsiddhiki in the sense it is not accomplished due to any action, but it is a swabhavacha or swabhavam, or inherent or inborn. Then only it is called prakriti, and it is uncreated. It is not something which has been created new into anybody, or what is there is, it is the swabhava or the prakriti or the nature of every creation. Now, why these are all being explained is that we are taking this step by step refutation of all the pratipaksha, means opposition, which can come up in our mind when we are studying the Ajadivada. How are we really not subject to birth, death and decay? We are the immutable, permanent Amritam, Turiyam, Atma, Brahma. To arrive at this knowledge, the mind will bring all these sorts of opposition or the objections from our experience, also from what we have learned from outside. Each of them need to be taken up and refuted. Then only the false adherence to these beliefs can be shaken up and thrown out. For that purpose, Gaudapada is taking each one of these aspects and explaining it one by one. We'll continue this because there are totally 100 verses. We are now on the 9th verse, and 10th verse onwards we will do it in the next Wednesday. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you. Dhanyavada.